excited for our first workshop. How the fuck did we get here? But to answer this question, it's important to have some background information and look in the past and find out where the stigma actually came from. And that includes a short history lesson. So let's dive right in. The word menstruation derived from the Latin word meses, meaning month, and the Greek word mene, meaning moon. So it was believed because the cycle is around 28, 29 days, could also be longer, of course. And the moon's orbit around the Earth is 29.5 days. It was believed that it was connected. But on a side note, modern society has not found any concrete connections. Historically, women had fewer periods than they do today, about 150 across their lifetime, due to factors like malnutrition, illness, or earlier menopause. In contrast, the modern women of today have around 150 periods. And menstrual taboos are nearly universal and have often been used as a tool to reinforce gender inequality. For instance, the Maya believed menstruation was a divine punishment. The myth tells that the moon goddess, who after sleeping with the sun god, was punished and her blood transformed into snakes and illnesses. In the Hebrew Torah, a menstruating woman was labeled as unclean, and everything she touches becomes contaminated. Even her husband is considered impure until sundown if he touches her. So today, some Orthodox Jews are still following these rituals, which includes a bath before resuming sexual relations. Hindu women in Western Nepal are forced to reside in windowless huts for the duration of their period, or even a duration of 2 weeks when they first get their period. Many die every year, actually, because of suffocation, because of very small confinement in those spaces, but also snake bites, freezing, or even assault. In 2005, the Supreme Court in Nepal actually also banned this, but the ban is not really widely enforced yet. Through medieval Europe, menstrual blood was viewed as toxic and even believed to carry poison. And menstrual cramps were also a punishment from God because of Eve's original sin where she ate the apple. But not every culture viewed menstruation as a negative thing. In the Kalasha valleys of northern Pakistan, women considered their communal menstruation house the most sacred place. That's where they meet, they gossip, they exchange information, even bring their kids, and the only thing that is not allowed are men. So it's a very safe space, actually, for them. Also among the hunter-gatherer groups in the Ituri forest in the eastern Congo, a girl's first period is really celebrated, with older women offering advice on her cycles and sexual health. In the late 1700s, there was the emergence of gynecologists, but of course, it was entirely a male-dominated field. And in the 1900s, as more women started working, they started attempting to study or even vote. Basically, menstruation was used as an excuse or a scientific argument from some of these gynecologists against the women's education. So they basically explained that during your period, any intellectual activity would be too taxing for women, or that not enough blood was reaching the female brain, or it was even leading to infertility. But interestingly, they were still allowed, or it was still recommended for them to work, just not study necessarily. Now we're going to fast forward to 1957, where the birth control pill was approved. And even though it was not at the beginning a contraceptive. And only in 1969, there was the first adhesive maxi pad that hit the market. At that point, menstruation started becoming a profitable business. And that was also when the tone around it began to change a little bit, and they were starting to market it. The menstruation stigma is a form of misogyny, and the negative taboos condition us to see menstruation as something shameful by not naming it or reinforcing the idea that it should be not named after all. And also naming it, for example, Anti-Flow or Strawberry Week, this reinforces this taboo as well. But where does this taboo come from? Also in our language and so on. There are a few different theories. So Freud who was from Vienna actually, he suggested that it stemmed from a primal fear of blood. Other theories suggest from Robert McElevane. He had the theory in the 2000s that where he introduced the term non-menstrual syndrome, which suggested that there was like a male reproductive envy that led to the stigmatization of menstruation as a way to dominate women. Another theory by Cleland Ford proposed that menstrual taboos developed from early society's beliefs in its toxic effects, as we already heard. And the insane thing was that menstrual blood toxicity was only disproven in the late 1950s. Menstrual taboos have played a significant role in the history of gender inequality. And while some see these taboos as the root of patriarchy, others, like Professor Chris Knight, argue that early taboos were created by women themselves to ensure their autonomy, only later being turned against them. And of course, understanding this complex history is crucial if we want to break down these harmful taboos and also move towards a society where we can talk openly about menstruation without any shame. And a recent study, just to look at in the present, a recent study from CLUE, this was actually this year, so 2024, found that 60% of respondents felt ashamed of menstruation even before their first period. 80% of the people mentioned that they had no proper education about menstruation before it started, and 75% said that they didn't know what was happening when they got their first period.
I would love to just make a brief introduction to why do we talk about hormones and why they are so important. So first and foremost, our hormones are kind of reminding us we are part of nature. So hormones are just like little chemicals based on either protein or fat tissues, and they're really messengers that are affecting every part of our body, from body and life, from mood to digestion to sleep to reproduction. And I think nowadays we are almost like so often disconnected by just sitting and staring on our laptop all day long that almost if you wouldn't have to go and eat or go and pee, like would forget that we have those like natural urges. And I think hormones are a good reminder, like, hey, we are still just animals. And right now there's a really growing problem with hormonal health. There's quite few reasons around this. One of them is endocrine disruptive chemicals exposure. So endocrine disruptive chemicals are those chemicals that can mimic our hormones in our body, and they can either block or interfere in production or removal of hormones. Those endocrine disruptive chemicals, they are present in pesticides if we eat conventional food, in plastics, in cosmetics, so they're really all over. And there's a really growing like public health fear of how much infertility issues we are going to already are and we are going to face. With both male sperm decreasing its activity hugely and growing rise of problems with polycystic ovarian syndrome and thyroid problems, and etc. So it's really important to be talking about those topics now, because it's only going to get worse and worse. And there's also reason why I think it's important to talk and interesting to talk about hormones, because I think it's a really good kind of mirror. The endocrine system is a good mirror for us if what's going on in our life. And of course, as I mentioned, the hormones are really profoundly impacting all of the elements of our life. So from hunger hormones, which are stimulating us to eat, to hormones which are making sure that we're awake and sleep mode, as cortisol and melatonin. To also our mood. So throughout our menstrual cycle, throughout the 28, 30 days that we are there, hormones that are part of the reproductive system, as estrogen and progesterone, will fluctuate, and their fluctuations are going to be for sure shifting how is our emotions and mood, and how is our sometimes also anxiety level or depression level if we struggle for any of those. So that's why it's so interesting and important to talk about all of those hormones, as they are also very interconnected with each other. So just to give you a few of the examples of how they're interconnected. So for example, when we have a deadline at work, and the deadline is causing us a lot of stress, and the cortisol level are starting to rise. Cortisol levels are produced in they're produced in our liver, from the same precursor hormone as progesterone, and which progesterone we need in the second part of our cycle in order to make sure that we can complete our cycle. And when there's too much cortisol, this can lead to disruption of our ability to produce progesterone, which can disrupt our luteal phase, and this can further on disrupt our hormonal cycles, lead to mood swings, etc., etc. At the same time, when we have too much sugar, in order for our body to regulate, our body needs to start producing insulin, which can take the sugar compounds throughout our body and spread it around. And the problem is when our body is busy making insulin, it doesn't have so much energy and time of making sex hormone binding globulin, which is this protein that can kind of trap testosterone in our body and estrogen, and make sure that we can remove it from our body. So when we are unable to produce enough of sex hormone binding globulin, there is a lot of estrogen and testosterone running around our body, which can lead to hormonal imbalances and lead to, for example, making even worse our polycystic ovarian syndrome if we struggle with it, or we can be connected with acne and irregular menstruation cycles, etc., etc. And then the final just interconnection I wanted to show you, but I'm sure we could talk about many more, is, for example, when we are exposed to blue light at night, because all of us, we like to work long hours or use our phone or computers, which is, very typical. I think, sadly, when we are exposed to the blue light, this artificial lightning affects our circadian rhythm. So when we are exposed to blue light in the evening, our body thinks, hey, it's actually a daylight, so we shouldn't be producing melatonin. And once we suppress the melatonin production, we are suppressed the part of our brain that is also responsible for production of another hormone called gonadotropin releasing hormone, which we are going to talk about in a second, which is controlling our, again, luteinizing hormones, which are part of the second part of the cycle. So you can see how if we do something, as depending on what's on our plate, or depending what will be our decision in the evening, this move most likely affects our hormonal cycle. So that's why there's no straightforward way to deal with our hormonal health. It's not about just taking the right supplementation or just doing the right meditation. It's about embracing all of the elements, which is the food, the movement, the sleep, the ability to relax, as the pillars for the hormonal health. So our body has two cycles, the circadian rhythm and the infradian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm we share with men as well, which is the 24-hour cycle of day and night, where at some point, we start regulating, basically it regulates everything that happens on the 24-hour cycle. So from the digestion to body temperature to metabolism, sleep, etc., etc. And there are, of course, ways, and it's super important to also make sure that we are supporting our circadian rhythm. So here's our 6 simple ways we can support it by, first and foremost, establishing a sleep routine that is the same throughout week and weekend, because our bodies are quite repetitive. They like to be quite repetitive. So it's good when we can provide a consistency. And it's really good to also have a winding down routine without using the phone, sleeping in the darkness without electronics, That also really helps. Trying to avoid alcohol and caffeine in the evening. Try not to eat 2 hours before they're going to bed. And in the morning, like awakening our body by exposing ourselves to natural light. And I would like to show you a bit more or less of the male hormonal cycle, which is very simplified, and now there's some voices that saying that maybe hormonal cycle of men are also influenced by the seasonality of the earth, which would make total sense. But more or less, the hormonal cycle of male, specifically in testosterone, which is one of the primary, of course, hormone in the reproductive system, is really fitting our work design. So in the morning, we have high testosterone, they have high testosterone, and they're, it helps you to be focused and have lots of energy, and you're just like task-oriented. And in the afternoon, the testosterone slowly decreases, which is maybe usually in the corporate world time a bit more socializing and maybe connecting through pitching or networking. And in the evening, we kind of wind down as the testosterone is the lowest, and then it repeats over and over 365 days. And then I hope that you're ready for our hormone cycle, which looks a bit more diverse, let's call it this way, and in which there is not really one day that would be almost the same, because every day there are several different hormones that are either high or low, that are trying to perform the task during our years of menstruation. So we have the winter, in which all of our hormones are low, and this is time of our menstruation. And this is usually the time when our physical activity or physical level of energy is the lowest. And this is when we might be a bit more prone to be reflective. And I'm going to tell you why later on. Then we have the spring, which is our energy increases a bit. Our focus and mood changes towards being a bit more explorative. We have the summer, which is our prime moment with most of the estrogen and testosterone gives us lots of energy, lots of sexual desire of being outgoing, etc., etc. And then we have the luteal phase, which is the inner autumn, where our energy starts to decrease. So quite a different when we compare this repetitive flow, very simplified, of course, to this. And I would like to also tell you the story of the hormones that are inside of your body, because there is quite some powerful women inside you that are managing. I stopped sharing, I think.
No, you're still sharing.
I'm still sharing. Right. So on the very top, we have, as I mentioned to you, gonadotropin releasing hormone, which can be influenced if we are exposing ourselves to blue light. And you can think of her as a Meryl Streep in Devil's Wear Prada. I mean, I don't know if you saw this movie, but like she sits on the top of the building. She's the boss of the bosses. She's not really communicating with anybody below her, but she's kind of responsible for all the show. And this is a bit the story of this hormone, as it's released directly from hypothalamus to the pituitary gland. And there it can stimulate the follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which will do all its work. So basically, this hormone is just connected to the right gland that is going to release other hormones that will start all the show. And then we have Tyra Banks, which you can think of her a bit during the American top model. As she comes in the morning, for all of the future possible models, she makes everybody super excited. Then she disappears, and then she comes back on the grand finale. So follicle stimulating hormone, out of all of the eggs that we have in our ovaries, will decide which of those cells will start maturing. So it starts the whole new cycle. And then once the follicle is ready to release itself to the fallopian tubes, it's coming for the final final moment to make the final push, and then it disappears. Then we have estrogen, which is our inner Beyonce. She's the hormone this is the hormone that really makes us, feel really good and very outgoing, and it clears our face, and it makes us look more sexy. And it's the hormone that happens for us during the springs and summer. And it gives us in general like good feeling and confidence, and just makes us a bit like Beyonce. And then during the ovulation, like when the actual ovulation happens, so the egg managed to release itself from the cell, we need like the final push. And I had somebody before as this final push, but now we can have Kamala Harris, as she comes in the final 24 hours before the whole things happen, and she really kicks everybody asses, and she makes sure that that the egg can be released. And then also we have testosterone. We have testosterone in our bodies. It's not only a male hormone, and it also this function is to help us to build muscles and bone density. So a bit of like Serena Williams. It's really making us strong. It also boosts our libido, and it also is involved in the ovulation phase. And then we have the final one and only Kristen Stewart, which is our bit of sad, depressed Kristen Stewart type of hormone. Progesterone dominates in the luteal phase, which is our inner autumn, and it can make us a bit of mood swings and a bit of anxiety. We are slowing down, but there's good reasons for that, because our body thinks, hey, maybe you are pregnant, so I want to make sure that you are not like jumping around anymore and jumping on the trees, because I want to make sure that you're rather calm down and you're protecting the possible baby that's inside you. So that's why our body is quite smart of trying to slow us down a bit. So again, if this is your ovaries, you can see here all the process from the beginning until the end. So you can see we have several of cells. One of the cells will be stimulated by the follicle stimulating hormone. It will start maturing, and the ovulation will happen of releasing the cell into fallopian tubes. And what's really interesting is that once the cell will complete its maturity and it will release the egg, it will turn into temporary gland. Gland is an organ that can release hormones, and it will start releasing progesterone. And once it's done, it releases progesterone and nothing happens, and your body will start shredding the lining of uterus by releasing the unfertilized egg. It will actually start reabsorbing itself. So when we feel more going inwards in this period, when we feel like, it's more time to ground and look inside, it actually makes a lot of physiological sense, because your body is literally like reabsorbing parts of the whole process of the ovulation, or, well, the hormone cycle. Yes. So almost last slide before we will take a short discussion and then a short break is there, as I told you, there is a bit of misconception that we are just having hormonal cycle and that it doesn't really affect too many things. But actually, it affects us drastically. So when we are trying to be the same throughout the month, it's really like humanly impossible for us. So going from the left, our brain changes up to 25% during our cycle due to estrogen. As during the ovulation, we have increased synaptic connections, which can boost our mental sharpness and creativity and communication skills, etc., etc. It also releases serotonin, so this is the happiness neurotransmitter. And immune system, during our second part of the cycle, when our body thinks, hey, maybe we are pregnant, our estrogen, our progesterone will like lower down the immune system, just not to interfere in potential in attacking the baby itself. Digestion, we are having estrogen is suppressing the digestion in the first phase, so we are slowing down with metabolism, and then the second part we are accelerating with metabolism, which increases our hunger, so we might have more cravings and higher appetite. Microbiome, Again, estrogen prompts growth of the good bacteria, and as it protects the lining of our gut. And then, of course, the mood and the stress hormones in the second part of the hormonal cycle with sad Kristen Stewart can make us a bit more down. Yes, so that's why we need to start breaking from the 24-hour cycle, which is actually designed for men, where we say, oh, I need to perform on the gym the same way all the time. And I should just, restrict myself from fat. And I should just be all the time producing and all the time very productive. And I should be feeling very static, which is impossible to thinking, okay, no. It's impossible to feel static when all of my changes, all of my body changes. And I need to, try and strive for accepting and adapting my choices in my fitness or sport and food and productivity towards those phases that are happening. And also phases outside. So also we need to remember that we are influenced by the seasonality. Some of the benefits, if we decide to do it, we might feel more energized. We might feel just less friction in our life. We might feel more balanced and having less mood swings. We also might have workouts more effective. I spoke with quite a few women that are hardcore HIIT training, rowing kind of, people which exercise in this way. And they say, okay, we actually feel like we are gaining weight, for example, when we push ourselves so strong during the periods, because our body thinks like, what the heck? So much is happening inside of my body, and then I put my body also through so much extra stress that is just the cortisol level is over the roof. And then, of course, it helps us also to support in case any of us would like to ever get pregnant. The birth control is a big topic. Maybe we'll leave it on another day, but it's just good to mention that it is the primary endocrine disruptor, as I mentioned to you. Endocrine disruptors are one of the main issues with our hormonal cycles. And there's a lot, I think that it for sure did wonders for us as a female part of the population, but there's also a lot of risks, which I think should be well assessed and understood before anybody decides to take a hormonal birth control. Few signs of the normal cycle. So its length, it's not only 28 days, it can be 35 days. That's also good. The color should be somewhere cranberry from the beginning till we finish. The flow should be somewhere between 4 to 7 days. We should have a steady consistency without clots per se. And we shouldn't really feel so much pain. Rather, of course, there's something happening in our uterus, but not significant pain. Cyclinac method, but difficult name to pronounce. So this method was created by Alisa Vitti, which is the author of those two books. So she herself had a story of she wanted to be a medical doctor, but she suffered from polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is this disorder in which you don't ovulate because you have a lot of cysts in your ovaries. And most of the women that I spoke to, but also in experience of Alisa Vitti, doctors usually just prescribe anti-conception just to totally remove the whole ovulation cycle. And she was really, not happy with this answer because she thought, okay, like it's not really addressing the root cause of why am I not going for the ovulation, but why am I just creating cysts. So she dived deeply into everything that she could. I think the process took like 5 years, and she was trying everything: Chinese medicine and functional medicine, and nutritional genomics, and behavioral psychology, etc. And finally, she managed to connect all the dots and heal herself from PCOS. And now she's a known hormonal educator. I would say that she's probably one of the first, like the one that came kind of famous, because right now on Instagram, shit, somebody's calling me. I'm sure it's my mom. Wait, just sorry. So yeah, So she managed to find a recipe for it, and now she's trying to educate and help other women around the world. And I find her books quite inspiring. I actually read it like 5 years ago, I think. I remember I was on a train to Copenhagen and I read it first time and I thought, wow, that's so crazy, you know, like because the knowledge there was so unfamiliar to me. And so like there was a book that was telling me that I should be rethinking my whole life just because I am menstruating. And I thought, wow, this is way too much. So I put it away on a bookshelf and I didn't look into it like for 2 more years. But then luckily I came back to it. So anyway, so basically what she's saying is that we should be first and foremost knowing where we are in our menstrual cycle, because this knowledge will help us to support our journey of changes, in modification of diet and fitness and lifestyle, and also, you know, creativity. And it's like an ongoing experiment. So it's not like the things that, of course, she's telling because it worked for her and her patient, it doesn't mean that it worked for you. But I think it's more a way of thinking around our hormonal cycle and way of thinking about our life. So first she said, okay, well, we need to track our hormonal cycle. I'm sure that all of us use an app to it, which I think is a great start. The reason why to track it is because it can help us, of course, to develop and become like an expert in ourselves. I mean, there's no doctor, no psychologist, no nutritionist, no physiotherapist that will be an expert on your body. Those professions can just help you to assist in managing better your body, but you need to first and foremost know what's happening. And it also increases our body literacy. So it helps us to know, okay, there's some changes. I have more information. I can also provide more information to health professional if that's needed. And it's also a great moment for self-reflection, to just look inwards. And we can, beside the apps, so she really urges to like, okay, apps are great, but if we can add maybe a bit of notebook writing or, you know, just noting down a bit how we feel, that is really helpful to be more holistic rather than just mapping, my poop was bad today, you know. So she said, okay, there's the physical need, there's the physical aspects, needs, and emotional aspects. So we can look at, yeah, hey, how was my digestion, or how was my libido, or was I bloated? Then my needs, did I have craving today? Like, oh wow, I really crave some chocolate, and then you realize, okay, always 5 days before my hormonal cycle, before my menstruation, I crave some chocolate. And then you have emotional aspects. You know, how did you feel today? And I was doing it for quite some months, and sometimes it might be confusing because I felt so many things in one day. But so just to have even this moment of like, okay, maybe there was few dominant emotions in that day that I have been feeling. So now I will take you through 4 of the stages, and we're going to talk briefly about each of the stage. Each of the stage here. So we start from the follicular phase. So that's our inner spring. So we just went off our menstruation. Our estrogen start rising. Estrogen boosts our brain working capacity. So we are start having new energy, you know, opening for new projects. Here in our food, most likely we might still have a lower appetite, as I told you. We might want to have lighter salads, lighter food, not everything particularly super heavy. I won't be focusing too much on food because the next webinar we have is just on food. So then we're going to dive deeply into how can we support our hormonal healthful food. Then we have the exercise. Here we are start having new energy. So, you know, we probably can hit a bit harder than before, as we start, being able to take it on our body. So maybe it's also a good time to start a new sport. If you were postponing for a long time, hey, I really want to go salsa dancing, maybe follicle phase right after your period is a new moment to start something new. It's a good moment to start something new, and it does apply also for creativity and work. So in the creativity, she kind of uses the project management cycle where she say, okay, in the creative world, prepare. And so, you know, prepare, dream about your big vision, start gathering resources, you know, just like as you would do in the garden during spring. Then our work, we have like increase in creativity, focus, mental sharpness. So it's good time to open new project, open new tasks, and do stuff that are maybe a bit more demanding. And in our sex life, we might be experiencing still vagina dryness at the beginning. So it's good to use lubricant, and maybe it's also good to try something new in your sexual journeys. Then we have the ovulation, where we have higher estrogen, higher progesterone, higher testosterone, no progesterone yet. Estrogen will increase our synaptic connectivity, so that will boost our sharpness. When it comes to food, again, we still might have lower appetite. We might to eat bit not so heavy meals. We also want to support food, our body with food that helps us to reduce excess estrogen, which is fermented food that boosts our microbiome. During the ovulation phase, it's the best time to kick the exercise really hard. So, if you have HIIT training or boot camps or kickboxing, it's best to schedule them for the moments of ovulation. Creativity, this is when we are really like, if you in your spring you were preparing new project, then it's really good to go and talk about your plans, to also maybe go for those dates that you were planning. Time to really use the communication skills, the inner Beyonce inside of you, to really boost yourself out. And here we will see the highest sexual drive. So probably you don't need any lube in this moment, and it's time to focus on receiving and just embracing your sexual needs. Then we have luteal phase. As you remember, this is our inner autumn. This is sadly Beyonce is saying bye-bye, and then Kristen Stewart is saying hello to you. Bit of hello darkness, my old friend. Here we have with food, it's time to, we probably will have higher food demands, more calories during the day. So it's good to have slow releasing carbohydrates, like lots of fibers that will make sure that will keep you full for a long time. It's nice to have something warm, roasts or bakes or soups. It's good to also take certain vitamins like vitamin B, calcium, magnesium, fibers. We're going to talk all about this later, next month. In terms of exercise, you still might feel quite energetic because you still have quite some estrogen and testosterone, but over time, closer to your period, this will decrease. So it's nice maybe to focus now more on strength and flexibility. So instead of HIIT training, you might think of intense yoga or strength training or Pilates. And when it comes to creativity and work, it's time to you prepare your plan in spring, you pitched it in summer, and now it's actually time to do the work. So to schedule maybe longer administrative task or repetitive task, or just tasks that you just need to sit down and do, not so much opening new. That will be a good time to finish and wrap up projects. And then the same with exercise. In the beginning, you still might have higher sex drive, and then slowly it will decrease, and you might even experience some vagina dryness. And then we go into our winter, where all of our hormones are low. And because of that, apparently, in this book, she said that our connectivity between right and left hemisphere increases, strengthening our intuition. So if you ever had this moment, at least I for sure had those moments of some self-realizations during your period, it's really worth noting them down and recording them, because there might be something about them when they hit you. It's really important to start replenishing, because a lot is happening in your body, to replenish your minerals and your vitamins with nutrient-rich foods, especially with proteins and fats. Just have lots of stews and soups, food that makes you warm and cozy. And here it's really good time to actually not exercise for some days. So, don't do high intensity training. Of course, you can do it. You can do whatever you want, but it might put your system into stress, which might not be beneficial. And so the suggestion is to rest, or maybe just do yin yoga, or just do some gentle walking. And when it comes to creativity, it's best to reflect, relax, be kind, reflect of your last month, think about maybe setting intention for the next month, and just really tap into the intuition. And then you might I need Italians. Okay, we mute the Italians, no problem. They always talk so much. You might want to be physically active in this period, but you need to remember that organs can release nitric oxide and oxytocin, which actually can reduce the menstrual discomfort. So you should not necessarily shy away from orgasms during your period. Perfect. Before we go to the breakout rooms and open discussion, I would like to also mention a few things of things that to identify if you're not having leaks of energy in your life. I mean, as a menstruating or non-menstruating woman in general, we are juggling a lot. So it's good to check in with yourself if you're getting enough rest, if you're not skipping too many exercises, and also not skipping too many meals. Also, if you have your boundaries clear, if you're not like sometimes saying yes to many things. If you're also forgetting maybe to ask for help and doing too much, like I know that I'm forgetting to ask for help and doing too much constantly. So some energy is leaking there for sure. And also if you're managing your stress and money properly, because those elements, even maybe if you will have, the right mindset, they still might jeopardize your trials of aligning your life with your hormonal cycles. Yes, and now before we go to the breakout discussions, I would love to hear if you actually feel some of those seasonal changes, or if you feel actually you don't feel affected throughout your month.